So tomorrow night is you and Dax Harwood. He's the first member of the Pinnacle you're having a match with. Why was he the perfect opponent?
Well, I think the idea is when you have, Mike Tyson coming and you want to get him involved as much as possible. So to have him be the ringside enforcer just seemed like a no-brainer. And then you want to put on one of the biggest matches you can. So it was like the first battle between the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle. And I mean, Dax Harwood is about as tough as it comes. So I think it's going to be a great matchup of two guys who just want to beat the crap out of each other, with a guy at ringside who's famous for beating the crap out of people. So people will be getting the crap beat out of them tomorrow night, one way or another. Hopefully it's not me.
Oh, you're going to have Sammy out there with you, and you and Sammy have such a great relationship. What was it that initially drew you to him?
I just saw him originally. He was working on a pay-per-view, like an NWA pay-per-view, where I wanted to watch it because Cody was wrestling against what's his name? The guy from England that was the NWA champion, Nick Aldis. Yeah. So then I just saw Sammy in one of the matches, and I remember that's kind of right when AEW was getting put together, and I just had text Cody and said, this guy's really good, and he's a good-looking guy. He's got a great swagger. He's tremendous in the ring. We should take a look at him for AEW, and that's kind of where it all started. And then we were going to put together kind of the Jericho faction. He's one of the first guys that I suggested. I said, we got to have Sammy Guevara come with me, but we got to get rid of that stupid panda head that he has. And both of those things happened.
What kind of advice did you give Sammy when AEW was starting and first Dynamite was starting, given that he's not like an XWE guy or anything like that?
Well, nobody was really an XWE guy. That was the beauty of AEW, is that we had a whole young locker room. I don't really remember anything that I said at that point in time, but it's the same that I was telling to everybody. Like, live TV is completely different from, just doing your local TV taping, or, if it's a Ring of Honor TV taping or a live event where there's no TV at all. And I think I was really surprised at first just how well everybody adapted to live TV, because it is a whole different world, and there is a lot of different pressure to it that you don't usually experience. And I think everyone really, like I said, adapted to it very well, and there was really not a lot of problems. So I think that what I'm telling Sammy now, excuse me, and a lot of guys, is the same thing that veterans told me when I was, in my early 20s. You don't do so much. It's not what you do, it's where you place it. And now I'm the guy telling the young guys that. And I know they're thinking the same thing that I was thinking at the time when Nick Bockwinkel said the same thing to me. Oh, what does he know? He's just jealous, and he's just jealous because he can't do this type of stuff. And then as you get older, you realize, holy shit, Nick Bockwinkel, knew everything. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of the same thing for me right now. So I have a lot of those types of conversations, especially with Sammy, because he wants to do so much, and that's great, but you have to put things in the right spot. And it's all about storytelling. Especially for me at this point in time, the story has to fit what you're doing inside the ring. And I think slowly guys are understanding that and figuring that out. And as they get older, they'll figure it out even more. But that really is the crux of what makes you a great wrestler and a great storyteller, is where you put things and what twists the tale takes you that engrosses the audience and gets them involved.
Mm-hmm. So as you mentioned, we've got Mike Tyson as the enforcer. He's back on Dynamite. How did his return come about?
Well, we've been talking to Mike for a while, ever since he was here in May of last year. And it's funny because at the time he was kind of the adversary to Chris Jericho. And there was some talks of us actually doing a match of some sort. And then, Mike's schedule was busy, and we were almost going to do something, I believe, the pay-per-view where Orange and I did the Mimosa Mayhem. The Mimosa Mayhem was kind of thought of because Mike couldn't get there, to kind of think of something that would be pretty cool. So, we've been kind of flirting back and forth, and schedules weren't really working out, and Mike's availability and kind of where we were at on the show. So finally, it was just basically last week, later on in the week, and Tony Khan mentioned to me that Mike was going to be there. So then we have certain things and ideas in mind. Then you need to reconfigure those ideas because you want Mike to be involved at the highest of levels, and whatever he's doing needs to enhance the story rather than just shoehorn stunt casting. And I think what we came up with was even better than what we had originally. And having Mike for 2 weeks, you could do a little bit of a short-term angle, which is when he kind of made the save for the Inner Circle last week. And then now he's going to be the ringside enforcer this week. And I think it's just going to be a great kind of 2-part story that people will really enjoy. And I think, like I said, it's going to be a hard-hitting brawl tomorrow night, both in the ring and outside the ring. So I fully expect some people to get knocked out. And it might not even be because of Mike Tyson. Maybe I'll knock some people out. Maybe I'll knock some bitches out. I don't know. We'll see what happens.
I hope so.
Yes.
Was it you? Was it Tony that had the idea of we've got Mike back? Everyone expects him to go against Jericho, and then to have that moment where you two have the respect and decide you're on the same team.
Yeah, I don't think we even really discussed it because, now that the Inner Circle and myself are kind of baby faces on the good guy side, you wouldn't really want to have, any type of fight with Mike because Mike obviously is always going to be a baby face because he's Mike frickin' Tyson. So once again, it all works out. And I think the story will continue tomorrow night to find out more as to what really happened to get Mike there. That's one thing I always make sure to dot my I's and cross my T's when it comes to certain storyline plots. I don't really want plot holes or people not understanding what's going on. So we'll make sure to tell the story the way that it needs to be told. And I think at this point in time, had this been a month ago, it might have been Jericho versus Tyson, but it just so happened that it was right kind of on the crux of this big turn, which has been building up for months and months and months. So once again, let's do something to enhance that turn rather than go against the grain and take away from it. Not to say that Mike and I won't fight each other again in the future. I mean, we've been feuding each other on and off since 2010 or 2011. So it's been a decade as it stands. But for right now, this was the best way to tell the story. And I think above and beyond, we put together a really captivating, like I mentioned, kind of a 2-part mini angle that started last week and ends next week for as long as we know. And we also leave an open-ended door for, I'm sure we'll do that as well for him to come back when the time is right. He loves AEW. He respects wrestling, and we feel the same way. So I have no doubt in my mind that Mike will be back in AEW whenever he feels like he wants to come back, which will be a lot.
Mm-hmm. So you said you'd fight him, but would you team with him? Do you think Jericho teaming with Tyson would be a good match against?
Absolutely. I mean, once again, Mike Tyson means viewers. Mike Tyson means box office. And, he looks great. He looks the part. He looks better now than he did 10 years ago. So he's very believable. He's very Mike Tyson. Like last week I told him, nobody is better at being Mike Tyson than you are. So just be Mike. You can't really have a lot of plans and tell him you do this, this, and this. You can kind of say, here's the idea. And then he's going to go do whatever he feels. And, even back in May when he came to the ring to kind of interrupt the Inner Circle and that led to that big pull apart, that big fight, I had no idea he was going to come to the ring with an entourage. Mm-hmm. I didn't know there was going to be 6 guys. There was guys in the ring. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And it's just like Mike just felt like bringing him to the ring, and that's what he did. And it's like, all right, well, then let's deal with it. So like I said, with a guy like him, that's one of the reasons why we love having him is he's very unpredictable. He's very Mike Tyson, and that's exactly what you expect and what you want when you work with him.
Mm-hmm. So you announced the Blood and Guts match for May 5th, and it's something that AEW's held off on for so long. So why was the time right now rather than maybe waiting a bit longer?
I think it's one of those things. This angle and storyline with MJF and Jericho and the Inner Circle, and now the Pinnacle, has been going on since September of last year. Yeah. So I think just to not keep it fresh because it is fresh, just to keep people guessing and keep the right amount of explosiveness to it. Now's the time for Blood and Guts. Now you could also do Blood and Guts 3 months from now, but I think Tony wanted to do it sooner than later. And once I kind of saw his mindset for that, I thought, well, no better time than now. we're kind of starting the angle with it, but the angle, the storyline started a month ago when the Pinnacle was formed and they beat the crap out of the Inner Circle, which I believe was, like I said, it was already over a month ago. So by the time May 5th rolls around, I think we'll have been kind of 2 months in on that. So why not just, like I mentioned last week, why continue to play grab ass and, I'll fight you and you fight me and I'll attack you and attack me. You want blood, you got it, man. Let's do blood and guts. We've been waiting for it since March 25th of last year. It was booked and ready to go. And it's like, there's nothing more to wait for. This is a very hot angle. It's very heated. We've already seen a lot of blood and guts as it is. So why not take it into the double cage and make it official and see what happens? And that's the way I look at it. And I think people are very excited. People are ready to see it. And the thing about wrestling is you can never do something too early as long as the story is right. The worst thing you could do is wait too long to do something. And I think at this point in time, it's better to do it sooner than later. And May 5th is when it all goes down.
Mm-hmm. So because you were originally planning a Blood and Guts with the Elite, and there must have been a lot of stuff worked out for that didn't happen. Now planning this new one with the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle, is it totally like back to the drawing board with the ideas, or would you be taking anything that might have been considered for that first match?
There was nothing considered for that first match because we were just still in the middle of building it up. I mean, March 11th was our last live show, and that's when we slammed the garage door down on Nick Jackson's head. So, everyone knows the next week is supposed to be in Rochester. We're going to have Brody Lee debut, and then we're going to have Matt Hardy debut as kind of Nick's replacement for that match. So it's not like we had a whole match put together and we knew what we were going to do. It wasn't that at all. It was more just building the angle and the story. And it was such a drag because that story was built so perfectly to right at the spot where it was supposed to be. The pinnacle, if you will, would have been March 25th. So now, as long as you have the story built and it's there, like I said, like we're ready to go. We could go this week if we needed to, because people are excited and they're invested. And we've built, I think, in my opinion, one of the hottest stories on the show just over the last couple of months because it's been brewing for so long. So I think the match is almost secondary. It's the story and the circumstances and the angle and the reasons why there's a blood and gun match. And it's not just like, oh, let's just do it for the sake of doing it. I was reading somewhere like, well, maybe they can do another blood and gun match. Like, no, this isn't Hell in the Cell pay-per-view. You have 2 Hell in the Cells just because you have to have it. We don't have to have blood and guts. The story and the angle and the rivalry demands it. So to me, that's the reason why you do the blood and guts, because of the story. You don't create the story because of blood and guts, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So last week we saw you do an incredible promo on Dynamite. Like, how did you approach putting that together, and how important was it for you to come out with such a strong promo after all the violence we've seen and everything MJF has been saying as well?
I mean, it's very important because MJF kind of dropped the gauntlet. He did a hell of a promo, kind of a month prior, 3 weeks prior. And as soon as I saw it, I just had a bunch of ideas. It was quite easy to write, to be honest with you. And I just knew that this promo has to be good. It has to be different because it's the first babyface promo that Chris Jericho has cut in AEW ever. Yeah. So it really had to hit home. And it's one of those things, oh, Jericho's a great promo. Jericho's the promo of the year. Jericho's this, Jericho's that. Well, these are moments where you have to show that. And not every time you do a promo needs to be that. But that was one of those ones where it had to be a 5-star, promo, so to speak. And because MJF's was so good, if mine wasn't just as good, if not better, it could really set the wrong tone for this feud. So I just think, I had a lot of ideas and I had a lot to say. And it's kind of funny because when you go over it in your head, it's like, okay, that's about 8 minutes. But then what I didn't really register was that there was going to be a crowd, and the crowd is going to react and they're going to chant, and you have to give them a chance to do that. So when we were 8 minutes in, I probably still had another 5 minutes of stuff to say in my head. So I was editing as we were talking. I was thinking ahead of like, okay, I got to cut this and I got to cut this and I got to wrap it up. Because when you're on live TV, if you go 5 minutes over, that's a cardinal sin. I don't care how good your stuff is. So that's another thing as a pro you got to do. It's like, okay, well, I'll just start editing stuff on the fly. And that's exactly what I did. So I think that makes another kind of cool story about that. It was a great promo. It did exactly what we had to do. It set the tone once again that the Inner Circle and Chris Jericho are back in black. And also set the tone that if you think you're a better promo than me, you better think again, because I got a lot of gas left in the tank when it comes to being creative and showing that type of emotion that you need as a baby face
Mhm.
that you don't really show as a heel, because it is different.
Yeah. Did you feel different in yourself walking out there as a baby face and seeing everyone the way they were reacting to the Inner Circle now?
Not really, because it's been coming for a long time. The
Yeah.
angle to turn us babyface was great with the, I love that turn where we one up MJF and then he one
Mhm.
up to us, and then we went up to him, and then he got the final say. So there was, once again, there was a great tale that was told. I think the presentation of Back in Black was cool. We all agreed to wear black and kind of a new look, a new image. Pulling up in the cars like Fast and Furious kind of set the tone that this is a new Inner Circle. And I think people really enjoyed that badass element of the Inner Circle, which we hadn't shown for a while. And we felt it and we enjoyed it too. So when you try something new, and I always say when you turn from babyface to heel or vice versa, you need to update your character and do something that you hadn't been doing. I think we hit it out of the park that week, and we kind of got that feeling of like, okay, this is going to be cool.
Yeah.
Like now we know what we need to do. It gives us a little bit of an extra edge, and it's perfect for, they showed up in a private jet in a limo. We showed up in Lamborghinis with a motorcycle crew and all dressed in black. And I just think that really kind of lets people know that this is something new that you haven't seen, and you're going to like it. And this is going to be a war for the ages, and it's already started, and it continues tomorrow night.
Mhm. So with MJF forming the Pinnacle, when he's putting that together, did you have any input on who the members would be? And considering you were going into a feud with the Inner Circle?
No, no. I mean, we kind of knew that was the destination, and I was really adamant to do the 5-way switch. I've never seen that before. I think people always expect when a faction switches that two guys turn, and that's kind of why we teased that Santana, Ortiz, and Hager would go with MJF, and it's just me and Sammy. But I love the idea of 5 guys got into this. 5 guys turned together. 5 guys are stuck together. There's no reason for us to ever turn. That doesn't mean we have to come out to the ring with each other every week, but I think there can always be an allegiance and an alliance between the Inner Circle, because we're the originals. Once again, it's like Guns N' Roses, like Iron Maiden. Like nothing ever beats that original lineup where all the magic really happens. So when we were thinking about MJF starting a faction, I knew who was in it. It didn't really matter to me because it's not my decision, but I thought that the right people were picked. I think FTR is definitely one of the best tag teams. Obviously Wardlow, there's so much to Wardlow that we haven't seen, and hopefully that will continue to grow. And then I think Shawn Spears is kind of the one that some people are like, oh really, that's interesting. But I thought, like, if we're ever going to give this guy a shot, and everyone's saying how good he is and how he just needs a chance, well, he has the chance, and now he's going to run with the ball and show what he can do, or he won't. But I think that's one thing I love about AEW is that everybody gets a shot. Nobody's here on the roster just to be here. Nobody's here, just sign so-and-so, just put so-and-so on the roster just to have them, And I think when you have a guy like Shawn Spears, it's like a guy like Luther. He got a chance. He made the most of it. And now Chaos Project's one of the best tag teams in AEW, one of the most original and one of the most unique, because they were able to take that ball and take it to the next level. So I expect Spears to do the same because he's going to have all the opportunities in the world to do so. And that's why we put him in there in the first place.
Mm-hmm. There's quite a few factions in AEW. Do you think factions are a good way of getting more guys on TV and getting lesser known guys over?
Well, I mean, I'm in a faction, and it sure worked for the Inner Circle. Does everybody need to be in a faction? Probably not, but I think, if it gets more guys some TV exposure, that's great. And all I can ever really worry about is myself. And the top 2 factions in AEW by far are the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle. And that's where my mind lies, and that's where my creativity lies. So I'll never say no to getting somebody on TV and giving somebody a role. So that's what Tony Khan loves. He loves having the factions, and it's great because there's a lot of different ways that the inner circle can go when this Pinnacle thing ends, if we're not completely, blown up in a puff of dust at that point. But once again, I would never say no to somebody getting on TV. And that's another thing too, between Dark and Elevation, which are doing such huge numbers. I think every episode of Elevation is over 1 million views right now. The more kind of teams, I guess you can say, and the more people that have purpose to be on the show, the better.
Mm-hmm. So you were saying earlier there about Wardlow, and when the Pinnacle beatdown of the Inner Circle happened, there seemed to be a lot of like focus on you and Wardlow. So can we expect a match between you two in the future? And is he someone you'd really want to work with?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can see matches with all those guys. I mean, like I said, this week it's Dax Harwood. That's the first one, but we've got so much in the tank to do, even after Blood and Guts, between, FTR and Jericho and Sammy and working with Wardlow. And then, of course, obviously Jericho and MJF have more than one match in the chamber. We've already had one, but there's no reason why we couldn't have a dozen more if the story dictates it. So that's another thing I love about this rivalry, is that you can do these big blood and guts matches, but then you can also do, okay, here's FTR versus Santana Ortiz, and here's Sammy versus Spears, and here's Sammy versus MJF, and here's Wardlow versus Hager, and there's Wardlow versus Jericho. So there's so many combinations you can do. We could be doing this for the next 4 or 5 months if we plan it properly. And I always plan things properly. So there's no rush as long as the storyline remains hot and exciting with lots of twists and turns. And that's kind of what we have the mindset to do.
Mm-hmm. So this will be the first week that AEW is unopposed on a Wednesday. Can you see anything changing about the approach to booking Dynamite with this?
Once again, I mean, I think the fact that we're unopposed is huge. There's been other times that we're unopposed, but I think now officially that the war is over and we won. We never worried about what NXT was doing anyways, but a lot of other people did. So now that the focus is solely on us, I'm very happy with that, because we always put on a great show. And some weeks I think people miss out on the amazing stuff we've done because they wanted to see what was going on in NXT or whatever. Now NXT can be NXT. They can do what they need to do, and we can just continue to be AEW. Now, hopefully more people will check out what we're doing and not miss anything, because you don't have to choose. We never forced people to choose. But now that that rivalry and that war is done, and we won handily, now we can just continue to focus on putting on the best shows that we have, which we've always focused on. But now the fans can do that as well. You don't have to worry about flipping back and forth. You can come hang out with us for 2 hours and see every last minute and know that most of it or all of it is going to be good, depending on what week it is.
So you were the talk of WrestleMania weekend with your interview with Steve Austin. With that, did you have any direction from WWE or AEW about what you couldn't talk about it on it?
No, and I think that's one of the reasons why they let us do it. I mean, both Vince and Tony had to give their approval, but I think they both trust me and they trust Steve and know that we're not going to do some kind of a wonton burial or talk about a bunch of shit that doesn't matter. I think that was the perfect show as far as topics. I think we blew people's minds. A, that we talked about AEW, and B, and more importantly, that we started talking AEW at the beginning. I think Steve and I both thought that was the best way to do it, because so many pundits and critics were like, oh, they'll never talk about AEW. And when we kind of let off the show with that topic, I think it really hooked people to be going, holy smokes, they talked about AEW. What else are they going to talk about? So I just think it was a great 2 hours plus of storytelling. Steve's a great host. I think I have a lot of great stories and a lot of great stories to tell, especially when you talk about why I left AEW or why I left WWE and why we formed AEW and why I went there. Mm-hmm. And I think, once again, that I took great pride in the fact that people were kind of downplaying it. Oh, they'll never do this and they'll never do that. And I never would have done the show. And Steve would have never had me on the show if the idea wasn't to talk about my whole career, because that's what people want to hear about. And I think I give WWE credit for allowing me to be on the show. There was no involvement as far as edits. I mean, we went 2 hours and 7 minutes on the show. I mean, I don't think we talked much longer, maybe another 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And most of that stuff was taken out just for time constraints. I know there's some bonus stories they're going to be putting up, but it wasn't like they had to cut anything that we said, because everything that we said was the truth and it was real. And that's one of the reasons why Steve has such a great reputation as an interviewer, and why I have a great reputation as a guest. And I think both companies came out on top. Great business for WWE going into Peacock. Great business for AEW coming off this show, which aired on April 11th. And what's on April 14th, like you said, our first official unopposed episode of Dynamite. It was a win-win situation and gave the wrestling fans a lot of awesome stories to boot as well.
Mm-hmm. What kind of reaction have you got within AEW? Has Tony seen it and talked to you about it?
I'm not sure if Tony saw it yet, but I've gotten a lot of feedback from people in the company. Because if you're in the wrestling business, you should watch this. Because once again, it's a 30-year career traveling the world, and there's not a lot of stories like mine out there. So it was just really well done, and I'm hearing nothing but great feedback from everybody who's seen it, both in the business and outside of it.
Mm-hmm. And finally, as you said, you know, a lot of people were wondering if you talk about AEW and everything on it, but for yourself, like for posterity, like how much does it mean to you to have something like that on the network where you talk about your whole career, like from War to ECW to WCW?
It's cool that it's up there from a historical standpoint and from like going back into the vaults. To me, I'm most proud of the fact that I did it, that Chris Jericho appeared on WWE program. It was a very groundbreaking moment, that announcement. I think it blew a lot of people's minds. And that's kind of what I enjoy doing. I enjoy doing the unexpected, where people see things where they go, holy smokes, Jericho did that? What else can this guy do? So to me, just the fact that it was me that kind of opened that forbidden door, quote unquote, even further, I take great pride in that. The stories and kind of going back through memory lane are cool as well, but we could do another 2 episodes if you wanted to. We could do another 4 hours at least. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of my career. But the fact that it actually happened is what I really take great pride in, because once again, that's another thing that Chris Jericho did that probably nobody else could do at this point in time. And I like that. I was, like I said, I get off on that.